and welcome to the People Who Read People podcast with me, Zachary Elwood. This is a podcast aimed at better understanding other people and better understanding ourselves. You can learn more about it at behavior-podcast.com. Recently, I did an expose of Chase Hughes, who describes himself as the #1 expert in behavior and influence. That video was by far the most popular episode I've done. The 2 videos I put out about Chase have gotten more than 35,000 total views on YouTube. The popularity of this topic isn't that surprising. Chase is pretty well known due to his involvement with the Behavior Panel show, which has almost 1 million followers on YouTube. Chase himself has about 175,000 followers on YouTube. And Chase has been on Dr. Phil's show and promoted by Dr. Phil's media company, Merit Street Media. In this episode, I want to give my thoughts on the nature of Chase Hughes' grandiose claims and large deceptions in the influence and mind control and hypnosis areas. I want to talk about how Chase's stuff ties into the work and the bullshit of other people in the arena of Neuro-Linguistic Programming, aka NLP. Because Chase Hughes isn't an anomaly. What he does, the grandiose and clearly false claims he makes, ties into all sorts of similar things that various gurus and life coaches and business coaches and NLP trainers do. There are a lot of people out there looking for answers, looking for help, and a lot of people also looking for shortcuts to power and success and influence. And many of those people are easily fooled by people who claim to have authority and success, especially when these people have been promoted by various other people who also seem successful and who seemed like experts themselves.
What I truly got was a clear understanding of what true human needs are.
How easy it is to put the stuff into play.
Within the first hour, I was completely blown away by the level of knowledge that I received that was actually transferable into skill.
Some of these people looking for success and secret knowledge are willing to pay a lot of money. To give you a sense of what's at stake in these areas, the harms being done, one person wrote and thanked me for my work exposing Chase. They said that they were thinking about paying Chase $20,000 for Chase's, quote, graduate course. Another person who said they used to be in Chase's inner circle told me that one person had paid Chase $100,000 to spend a week training with him. One person who met Chase in Las Vegas told me Chase was doing performance hypnosis on a well-known MMA fighter there. These are just a few reports. I can't vouch for them entirely, but for a few reasons, I judge the people telling me these things as having inside information and also as being truthful. Some people might wonder, if this stuff is so illegitimate, why haven't people talked about this before? Or they might wonder, Chase's books have good reviews and people seem to like his stuff. Why is that? So in this video, I'll also get into the reasons why people like Chase are able to deceive people over the long term, why they're able to get good reviews and things like that. As part of that inquiry, we'll also get into the various influential podcasters and coaches and NLP trainers and behavior experts and assorted personalities who have promoted Chase over the last few years. Because all of these people, wittingly or unwittingly, have helped create the veneer of respectability that has allowed Chase to escape scrutiny for this long. It takes a village to raise a guru. Also, I want to say that this video will be specifically about the mind control and hypnosis and NLP type content and training that Chase has promoted. This won't get much into the behavior analysis areas. It won't get much into the behavior panel, for example. These things are related and some connections do come up in this episode, but later I'll do a separate episode focused specifically on the pop behavior analysis topic. And also, to clarify further, when I talk about hypnosis in this video, I'm not talking about all forms of hypnosis. The hypnosis discussed in this episode is specifically about the people who claim to be able to teach you hypnotic influence techniques to make you more powerful and successful in various ways. The kind of stuff that Chase Hughes offers, basically, which ties into Neuro-Linguistic Programming. This isn't meant to be an examination of the more one-on-one therapy-related forms of hypnosis, which I think are more legitimate. In all honesty, I don't know much about hypnosis therapy. A lot of that could be quite scammy and suspect too. I just mainly want to make clear that my talking about scammy hypnosis stuff in this video is definitely not meant to denigrate all hypnosis practices. And again, if you want a summary of what I found about Chase, go to my site, behavior-podcast.com, and look for the first Chase Hughes episode. I've had some people ask questions like, didn't Chase just exaggerate his credentials a bit in a fake it till you make it type way? What's the big deal about that? Or questions like, but Chase has a lot of fans, doesn't that mean he's legitimate now, even if he lied a lot in his past? Some of these people who ask these questions, I think maybe didn't make it all the way through the video, which is understandable as it was an hour long. So if you have questions like that, check out the summary on my site. Long story short though, throughout the 2010s, Chase lied about having all sorts of fame and renown across many areas and industries. Yet it's quite clear he had no renown or respect. There were basically no mentions of him online until the late 2010s, when he started getting on some podcasts. These were podcast hosts who didn't look into his background much and just trusted he was who he said he was. Those appearances created a seeming veneer of respectability online for people who searched his name after that. So in snowball-like fashion, little by little, with more and more podcast appearances, his online presence started to seem more legitimate, at least for people who weren't willing to take even a few minutes to vet him. Personally, I think there are relatively few people who've reached Chase's level of fame who have lied in such major ways about their credentials and experiences. Most people who deceive in such ways are much more subtle and careful about it. The only really surprising thing in all of this is why no one seems to have talked about this stuff until now. Also, aside from his claimed credentials and experiences, the things he has claimed he can do are just simply absurd to anyone who knows about psychology and behavior. But let's get more into that now. Let's review a few things Chase has said about his abilities to control people. I'll read from the 2014 version of his website. The CIA developed enhanced mind control methods as a matter of public record. The CIA programmers' experiments, ranging from programming sexual slaves to creating hypnotic assassins, even involving teenage girls. The methods they used were elementary at best. The Ellipsis manual contains world-first information available nowhere else on planet Earth. A person can be hypnotized against their will. A person can and will perform extremely violent and antisocial acts under hypnosis without their consent or knowledge and will disregard safety, morals, and law. Using the Ellipsis manual gives an operator complete access to the psychological compromise of almost any human being they encounter. The Ellipsis manual teaches operators a world-first set of methods ranging from covert creation of multiple personality disorder to developing mental slavery scenarios, wherein a subject will disregard all beliefs. He goes on to write, from profiling human weaknesses in a full section detailing how to see fears and insecurities of anyone you will ever meet, the book details step-by-step instructions on exploiting these human traits to allow more pronounced control and behavioral engineering. His website makes all sorts of grandiose claims over the years, but that should give you a sense of what's involved. And as Chase has gotten more attention on podcasts over the last few years, he has scrubbed these more ridiculous claims from his website, but you can still find them via the Internet Archive. Still, Chase's more absurd claims are still out there in various forms. For example, the following comes from his Ellipsis manual. Establishing and maintaining control of thought, behavior, and emotion. In Section 2, you will learn to take your profiling and people reading skills, which are now above the level of an FBI interrogator, and apply them in tandem with the most advanced psychological control techniques in the world. A little later he writes, after learning about the human social profiling methods, you will be given the master key to the human mind. And he writes, imagine your subjects standing at the wheels of their own large ships. The steering wheel is in their hands, their ships seeming to move just as they want them to. In reality, you actually have control of the rudders, not the wheel. The wheel only provides the semblance of control to your subjects. You control the movement. Now, almost no one with serious knowledge of psychology and hypnosis thinks such things are possible. Scholars of hypnosis consistently say there is not a way to hypnotize people and control them and make them do things against their will. You can search a little bit about that online if you're curious to learn more. For example, there was a recent paper by Stephen J. Lin and his colleagues that made the following points. Hypnotized individuals retain control over their actions and can resist hypnotic suggestions. Hypnosis should not be misconstrued as a special state, but as more accurately a set of procedures used to modulate awareness, perception, and cognition. Despite widespread belief, the ability to administer hypnotic methods does not require special skills beyond those required for basic social interactions and clinical procedures. We must keep in mind that big, grandiose claims require major evidence. But let's say that there was a way to gain full control of someone's mind. Presumably, it'd be something pretty complex and would take a while. But Chase has claimed he can do such things in a short time in normal everyday environments. On his site in 2014 and later, it said that, quote, a subject can be controlled for behavioral engineering within as little as 3 minutes. A deliberately induced multiple personality can be created in less than an hour. He even says he can teach you how to do this stuff quickly. That page reads, from the first day, you will be able to read the thoughts of people you interact with, and you will eventually learn to control them as well. In short, his claims are absurd. I reached out to Martin Taylor, who is a hypnosis expert. A couple people recommended that I talk to Martin about these things because he's someone who knows a lot about overstated claims of hypnosis and influence. I might interview Martin in future in more detail about these things. Martin does a show that he calls Hypnotism Without Hypnosis. At these shows, he tells an audience the intellectual, psychological reasons for why hypnosis works, and then proceeds to influence audience members in similar ways found at hypnosis shows, without all the usual hypnosis spiel bullshit. He's said to have been an inspiration for Darren Brown's Magic Act. When I sent Chase's website and other work to Martin, he was recovering from being sick, so he didn't have that much time to look at it. The first thing he wrote was, "It's so bad I'd like to have spent more time on it." He went on to say, "Part of me suspects that the whole site was written and designed by some AI program. ChatGPT, build me a flashy website designed to plug, as dramatically and aggressively as possible, a new psychological technique which promises the world but delivers nothing. No evidence or hard facts are necessary." Why, for an international best-selling author, does he have no Wikipedia page? Why has he not made any entries at all on his blog pages? But assuming it is meant to be taken seriously, I've had a look through his site and looked at excerpts from his books and their reviews on Amazon. He seems to have distilled snake oil into a form purer than any hitherto known. I mean, obviously you can't say it's crap without seeing some demonstrations, but then, like all shysters, he doesn't offer any. With NCI here, he appears to be trying to reinvent NLP. Neuro-Linguistic Programming doesn't mean very much, but neurocognitive intelligence means even less. And of course, Hughes provides no indication of what it actually is, although he is full of what it does and can be used for. And here, Martin references the mission from Chase's website, which reads, "To forcefully push the boundaries of what's possible with human behavior to protect national interests." Martin writes, "As Hughes himself says, some want an edge, some want the unfair advantage, some just want a superpower. In the end, however, what we all want is choice. My choice is to call out this bullshit for what it is." So that was from Martin Taylor. I debated not even going into much detail about the level of bullshit in Chase's content, just because I think to almost everyone the bullshit nature of this stuff is quite apparent. It can feel like explaining the obvious. It can feel a bit like explaining why water is wet. But considering the pretty extensive fan base Chase has acquired, and considering how many other people out there are making similar claims, I thought it was worth taking a deeper dive. As Martin mentions, one of the clues to the bullshit nature of Chase's claims is the lack of real-world examples and demonstrations. If Chase really had all the experiences he claimed to have, doing all this impressive work for the military or any industry, influencing and manipulating and brainwashing people, you'd think he'd have some interesting examples to reference. Let's take his book, The Ellipsis Manual. It has no interesting or high-stakes examples of him or anyone using these skills. The examples he gives in his book are completely mundane and boring examples, like low-stakes examples of getting slight clues from talking to someone in a store, talking to salespeople, things like this. He hints at how the various ideas can be combined in various ways to achieve major influence, but never even describes what that might look like in practice. Major claims require major evidence, but there's just not anything there in terms of how one would actually influence someone in a major way, let alone gain control of them. There's just nothing there. The lack of granular examples and demonstrations is on its own a valuable clue when trying to do your own research into such people. In my opinion, Chase's Ellipsis Manual is complete nonsense, full of half-baked and random and ambiguous ideas and practices that Chase has gathered from reading all sorts of other NLP and hypnosis and brainwashing materials, from the real to the unverified to the conspiracy-minded. This book is basically similar to Chase's Pickup Artist book, which was an amateurish compilation of random tidbits of ideas of dubious value and overstated importance, which Chase claimed would allow you to, within a few minutes, kiss and hook up with women. To be a good bullshit artist, you have to do some work, and Chase clearly reads a lot and takes a lot of notes. His Ellipsis manual and his other resources are simply compilations of an assortment of ideas, some decent and good, some completely bad and silly. But here's the thing that gets some people and throws them for a loop. Chase's book has 4.5 average rating on Amazon out of 5, and more than 1,000 people have rated it. How can that be? Simply put, people are easily impressed. All it takes to impress people sometimes is to give them a lot of ideas and to seem like an expert. I can say that I've seen this in my Poker Tells work. A significant number of people who leave me positive reviews for my Poker Tells books are not good judges of what makes good information in that space. They are very low stakes and recreational players. The reviews that matter are those from people who are serious poker players, who have played for a living and know how to tell good information from bad information. This is just to say we have to keep in mind that people who don't know much about an area can be easy to impress. Also, the nature of Chase's overstated and often silly claims are that they will tend to pre-select for more gullible people. I myself would look at the book description for the Ellipsis manual and see many red flags, meaning that I'd be unlikely to buy it. For example, I know that controlling people in the way that Chase describes is not possible, and his grandiose claims would make me think this guy is a charlatan. But the people who follow through and actually purchase the book are, no offense, more gullible and credulous, just as is the case for people who follow through and purchase Chase's trainings. And I don't mean to say this in a derogatory way. Not everyone has read that much about psychology and behavior to know what's possible in these areas. Not everyone has had the experiences in the NLP and hypnosis space that I myself have had, for example. Many people will think, understandably, something like, if this guy were not selling legitimate information, there'd be more negative reviews, and there'd be people criticizing him online. Some of the reviewers of the Ellipsis Manual book are more savvy. Here's one reviewer. Unlike the glowing marketing reviews and the exaggerated reviews on here, it's full of empty promises to teach you something that never materializes. Although the behavior table is unique, the rest is practically copied from other body language books, Neuro-Linguistic Processing, I think they mean Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and cheesy hypnosis claims. If anything, I learned to sell a lie by making false claims with bits of other people's legitimate work, and dragging out a message with the promise that it all comes together if you only practice and put in the effort. Basic sleazy salesman tactics. Another reviewer writes, this book feels like something more suited to the back of Mad magazine next to the X-ray glasses than on anyone's shelf. Another person writes, the book spends an awful lot of time telling you that you are now better than 99% of the world, whilst constantly telling you that you'll learn such and such a technique in the following chapters, only for the book to later say that you've now learned it. So let's talk now about NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, which is the template for Chase's content and general approach. As Martin Taylor said, Chase, quote, appears to be trying to reinvent NLP. There's a lot to say about NLP, and going into detail about it would make this video quite long. If you're curious to learn more in-depth stuff about NLP, I'd say go read the Wikipedia about it and search for terms like NLP debunked and is NLP legit. It's quite a rabbit hole, and I recommend going down it. If you learn about this stuff, you'll see these ideas pop up all over the place in various forms. So it is a good way to be able to debunk related ideas, knowing about this stuff. I'll just go through some NLP basics and some experiences I myself had during my time working for an NLP trainer named Steve Linder. Here's Linder's website here. He offered a course in something he called neurostrategies. Here's Linder's Facebook, where he refers to himself as, quote, one of the top personal and organizational performance strategists in the world. I worked for Linder for 6 months. This was shortly after the 2008 economic crash, when jobs were scarce. From the beginning of reading about NLP, I thought it was mostly bullshit, but I thought the job would be an interesting experience. And it sure was. Here's a clip of Steve talking about his teachings.
essentially, the reason why you felt the way you felt after the course was we put not just a little bit of information in there that got filtered through your belief system, your identity, and your rules of how things should be taught or how people learn or what's possible, impossible, but more of a, here's a lot of information, a lot of distinctions that, again, it was like a fire hose coming kind of into your brain of knowledge that filled up your normal filters and intentionally overwhelmed you, that all the rest of the information fell into your unconscious mind anyways. Because here's why. Most of you, when you left, your conscious minds were just fried going, what was my name? How long have I been here?
Linder came from the Tony Robbins universe. Tony Robbins is an NLP trainer, although from my understanding, Robbins doesn't like to use that term that much. But it's all the same kinds of tactics and ideas. Various people will repackage the ideas in various ways and use their own terms and trademarked brand names. For example, Steve Linder used neurostrategies, which was trademarked. Chase uses the brand name neurocognitive intelligence. You'll see the word neuro a lot in the mix of these people's offerings. Not only is it tied to the Neuro-Linguistic Programming roots, it just sounds impressive. It sounds like something science-based, something legitimate and intelligent. Some of these people branch off into other areas to train people on. For example, Steve Linder also taught investing. He had something he called DMAS, Dynamic Market Analysis System. He claimed he could help people be successful at stock investing using his special system.
Been an unbelievable experience this weekend. I've literally had no experience whatsoever in stocks or anything. I probably have only ever seen a stock chart probably once over my life, and I left here this weekend really feeling like I had a lot of certainty and confidence.
Linder had started out as an attendee and fan of Tony Robbins. Eventually he learned enough to branch out on his own and started teaching his own courses. So he became a sort of satellite, one of many satellites in the Tony Robbins world. A lot of these people share the same sets of attendees. People pay thousands, even tens of thousands of dollars to come to these events. Many attend these events frequently. For many, it's sort of a way of life. It's a circle of friends. Some people volunteer for free for the trainers in order to attend for free or just for a discount. It's a whole scene. Why do people attend the NLP and NLP adjacent seminars and trainings? There are a few reasons, but if I had to boil them down, I'd mention these few. People want to learn to influence and manipulate others. They want to be powerful. NLP claims to teach people shortcuts to influencing people. This helps explain why some business people and entrepreneur types get into it. Some trainers in these NLP and NLP adjacent areas lean into the darker aspects of these benefits. And I'd argue that's what Chase Hughes has done. He's taken the general NLP playbook and simply put a military and espionage theme to it, repackaging NLP concepts and other concepts into a top-secret government-type offering. Some people who attend NLP and NLP-adjacent seminars want to learn how to connect better with others. Some of the people who attend these things are life and business coaches and trainers and counselors of various sorts. Just to say there can be nicer and more compassionate motivations in the mix, not just power and influence. Some people attend for the transformational aspects of these events, the life-changing aspects, which I'll talk more about in a bit. Live NLP seminars fall into a class of other transformational seminars like EST and Landmark Forum and many others. You're not just gaining practical strategies and tips, there's also the chance to become a completely new and improved and wiser person. Added to those motivations, I think, are some people who simply like the community. I can say that based on firsthand experience. Some of the people who would regularly attend these things, especially the ones who volunteered for these people for free, seemed a bit lonely to me. There was a summer camp kind of vibe. They felt close and connected to each other. I think that's a big draw for the frequent attendees. So what kind of stuff do Steve Linder and others in the NLP space teach in these multi-day seminars? I'll review a few of the main things that stood out. NLP is predicated on hypnosis concepts. The so-called father of NLP is someone called Milton Erickson, a therapist who used hypnotic strategies to achieve results that were allegedly very impressive, though apparently some people question that claim. Steve Linder would jokingly refer to Erickson as Uncle Milty because he was such a beloved figure in the NLP world. NLP and NLP adjacent trainers claim they have hypnotic abilities. This is where these things overlap with the hypnosis training world, which is quite similar in many aspects. There are many NLP and hypnosis trainers who have little to no real experience or training and who make a lot of grandiose claims about their skills and abilities. Steve Linder often talked about putting people into trances. For example, a few days after I started working for him, he was talking to me about some strange, bullshitty stuff that I couldn't follow. So I had a bit of a blank expression on my face, and he told me, "Oh, I put you into a trance there. That happens sometimes." I felt completely normal, so I awkwardly was like, "No, I don't think so." And he said something like, "Yeah, it happens. It's no problem. It happens a lot. You'll find out." He would say stuff like this a lot. He had, in my opinion, basically drank his own Kool-Aid. He really believed he had amazing control over people. One claim he liked to repeat was that he was able to raise or lower the temperature in a room full of seminar attendees by using language related to cold or heat in hypnotic ways. He also believed his writing was extremely powerful. He talked about how his marketing copy and sales scripts used advanced language tactics and strategies that weren't obvious to the untrained eye, but that were extremely effective at manipulating people and getting sales. I've always been a writer, and to me, they read just like typical over-the-top sales copy. I didn't think they were anything special. One of the main ways NLP people believe they exert control over people is via the power of language. They claim that by using specific words and phrases that tug at psychological and subconscious underpinnings of people's thoughts, that you can influence people in all sorts of ways. One core NLP concept has been that different people have different preferred representational systems. For example, that some people use a lot of vision-related words and phrases like, "I see what you mean," and this showed that they were vision dominant, and therefore you could influence them using vision-related language. Or someone might be hearing dominant, so you could use phrases like, "I hear you," to influence them. But there's no evidence for this. Many studies have debunked it. To quote from one site about NLP debunking, after reviewing 63 papers, Heap concluded that the claims made by NLP authors about representational systems had been empirically tested and found unsatisfactory. And that's just one of the many ways in which NLP concepts have been debunked. Nevertheless, you'll still hear people repeat these things as if they're gospel. And these are ideas that Chase Hughes has repeated in many places. For example, there are many NLP concepts in his Ellipsis manual book. And there he writes, "The word choices of subjects reveal the sensory inputs they are using to process information. And these word choices will provide, over time, a map of how they process information and through which senses they prefer to receive that same information. In neuro-linguistic programming, the sensory systems play an important role in the structuring of language, increasing its impact on subjects' subconscious minds." Another NLP idea is the idea that looking in different directions, like down and to the right or up and to the left, reveals something important about what a person is thinking. NLP proponents often claim to be able to tell that a person is accessing either memories or imagination based on eye quadrant direction. In other words, they can tell if people are lying or not. Like the representational system stuff, there is no scientific evidence for this. Nevertheless, these claims have made their way out into the world in various forms and in various channels. There have even been police and security personnel who've gotten this kind of training. Despite it being known for a long time, it doesn't have validity. One study from 2012 by Wiseman was titled "The Eyes Don't Have It: Lie Detection and Neuro-Linguistic Programming." They wrote about doing 3 studies on the eye direction idea and finding no supporting evidence for NLP claims. The psychologist Rob Young has written about NLP on his site. He writes, "What is the modern psychological view of NLP? Researchers and qualified psychologists are mostly damning about NLP. In a 2019 paper published in International Coaching Psychology Review, a group of experts wrote that there are many critics of NLP who view NLP as variably a pseudoscience, pop psychology, or even a cult with no evidence base for its effectiveness. Based on their own investigations of 90 articles that they found on the topic of NLP, they concluded, in summary, there are no empirical studies that offer evidence for the effectiveness of coaching based solely on NLP tools and techniques. That's important. They did not find that there were only a few scientific studies supporting NLP. They found no papers, 0, zilch, not one." And that was from Rob Young's site. When it comes to the NLP eye direction ideas, Chase has also shared those, although I think in the last few years he's been careful in how he talks about them. For example, here's a clip of him on a podcast talking about this.
Is it like eye accessing cues?
Similar. And eye accessing is Don't get me started on that. But
Don't worry, I'll bring Greg in. No.
yeah, Greg and I disagree on some things, but the eye accessing cues were a great start. So it's not that they were trying to BS the world. This was their contribution. Someone added to it and added to it. So people say it's been disproven a whole lot. I think it hasn't been disproven. It's been improved. The understanding of it's improved over time.
So Chase's stance is that these ideas haven't been debunked, they've just been improved. I haven't seen Chase talk about how they've been improved, though. In what way have they been improved? Have they been improved, or is it just a good strategy to say such things? Because acknowledging their obvious weakness and lack of supporting evidence would be too harmful to people who promote these and similar ideas. And these eye direction ideas are shared by others in the pop behavior analysis space. I often see people in these spaces repeating these kinds of things in different forms. One pseudo-behavior expert I've talked about in past episodes, Jack Brown, often repeats the eye direction stuff. In one tweet he says, "It's important to differentiate between two kinds of guilt, when one feels remorseful, ergo remorse guilt, and when one knows they are probably going to be caught and suffer consequences, culpability guilt. Both are characterized with glances toward one's right lower quadrant." Here's a clip of Greg Hartley, who, like Chase, is a member of the show The Behavior Panel, talking about using eye direction to get a read on someone.
And she breaks eye contact, and I wish the camera angle were better because I'm almost certain she broke eye contact down left, but she broke eye contact left for sure. In this down left, anytime you're having a conversation with self and you're thinking about how to navigate words and what you should say next, you'll find people's eyes drift down to their left. So when you're talking to someone and they ask you a hard question that you need to put in perspective, you are going to drift down into your left. Now, there can be deviation. It can be hard way over here. It can be somewhere in here, but it's almost always that. I've interrogated a lot of people, and I've never seen a deviation from that one. Now, I don't believe in a lot of absolutes. As you guys all know, that's one I do follow, that and the down right eye movement for emotion.
Could there be some truth to eye direction tells? Sure, many things could be true. I believe there are many behavioral patterns that are used by practitioners that have not been researched yet. But one would think that someone would have found something by now, especially if these patterns are as reliable as so many in these spaces have claimed, and especially considering people have been talking about these ideas for decades now. But no, nothing has been found. Nothing that I know of. But these ideas sure make for an exciting story, and also, importantly, they tell a story that's hard to quickly debunk on one's own. And Chase has shared many supposedly unique observations that are similar to NLP concepts. Here's one where he talks about something he calls gestural hemispheric tendency and how it can be used to influence people.
And I asked Eric, like, what's the worst traffic that you've ever been in? And then Eric's explaining it, and with his left hand, he's saying, well, these people were piled up on the freeway. It was just as far as you can see. We were stuck there for hours. And then I asked Eric, you guys just went on a vacation, right? Down to Disney World or something. And he goes, oh yeah, we had a great time. So now his right hand starts coming up and gesturing. So that's really easy to spot. Just ask someone a question about something positive and you're finished. You already know their negative side. So the way to exploit GHT is a little bit complex, but if I know Eric gestures that way, this is backwards on my screen. It's a little confusing. But if I know Eric is moving that way, I'm going to move this way at the end of our conversation when I'm asking you to do something.
I just asked you, based on common sense and experiences in your own life, how much impact you believe such things would have on you. Do you think such things could influence you in a big way? Or do you think they sound like something that would likely be a very minor thing, if a thing at all? Another fundamental aspect of NLP is getting rapport with people. They use things like mirroring someone's body language and gestures, just as they try to mirror the way a person talks. This is where some of this stuff overlaps with pickup artist and public speaking and confidence training type materials, trying to gain rapport with people to be more likable and influential. And some of those things have some validity. For example, having your arms crossed can come across as standoffish to people. Body language can matter a lot, but a lot of the ideas are just overstated. Do you really think in a high-stakes situation like a business negotiation or when you're making a major purchase that another person mirroring your body language or mirroring your manners of speech is going to have a big effect on you? Do you really believe that someone who uses these tactics can influence you into doing something really against your own wishes or judgment? But that's what these people would have you believe, that these are powerful manipulations. And I think they can also be aware of how silly that can sound. So they'll say things like, these things become really powerful when you use a lot of them together and combine them. This can help overcome people's rational objections. They'll think, okay, you really need to work at this stuff and combine all this stuff, and then you'll have a big impact. And then when they're never able to do it, they'll just assume, I guess I didn't practice hard enough. My overall take on Chase and his body of work is that he's used the general NLP guru playbook, but has repackaged it in a rather unique military/MK Ultra/espionage sort of package. And this is what a lot of NLP people do. They repackage the basic ideas in various ways, making it seem like they've got some unique concepts and special knowledge. Because if you knew they were just repackaging a bunch of old ideas, you wouldn't be willing to pay them a lot of money. And you can imagine repackaging NLP ideas in all sorts of ways. Another way to package them would be in a pickup artist context. There are just many ways to package these ideas, these behavior and influence ideas, and aim them at specific audiences. I think there are likely other people doing similar things to what Chase has done, putting these ideas in a military-type package. I just don't know of any offhand. I would just imagine it's probably a thing. One of the people who reached out to me recently was a former fan of Chase Hughes, who had spent more than $1,000 on his content. He said he had a lot of knowledge about NLP, and he described Chase's expensive content as, quote, mostly repackaged NLP from the 70s, end quote. Another thing that happens at these NLP seminars is that they engage in some psychologically unusual activities meant to produce strange feelings. For example, at Steve Linder's events, they did an activity that involved participants staring into each other's eyes for several minutes. If you've ever done that, you know it can produce some strange feelings. It's not something that we're used to doing. So activities like that pull you out of your normal frames of reference and functioning, and when they're combined with the right kinds of framings about the amazingness of your experience, those things can really mess with people's minds. There were people crying after doing that activity at Steve Linder's event, and people saying it was life-changing, people hugging and saying they felt so close to the other attendees, this kind of stuff. And transformational seminars do a lot of similar things meant to make you have a big life-changing transformational moment, a big shift of whatever sort. And it does work. Many people walk away feeling like their life has undergone a wild transformation. But when those transformational feelings fade in a few weeks or months, they might start thinking, maybe I need to pay another few grand for another seminar, because these experiences can be a bit addictive. At such experiential and transformational type events, these kinds of activities can also culminate in what is called love bombing. The group members exchange all sorts of messages of love and closeness. For many people, especially the more socially isolated and lonely attendees, this can be an amazing and special and addictive experience. Love bombing is a technique known to be used in cults, too. It's just part of an overall strategy for forming tight bonds and attachments quickly. Now, to be completely fair to NLP and transformational seminars, I'll say that there are some valid and interesting and useful ideas in the mix. One important NLP concept is the power of, quote, reframing things. Basically a fancy word for assigning new narratives and stories and perspectives. NLP is a lot about the power of language. It's a lot about the power of storytelling. And I myself know that those things are hugely important. Changing the stories that we tell ourselves is a hugely important idea, more than I think most people know. We've probably all had experiences where we had a painful event and memory in our life, and thanks to either therapy or just natural progression, we slowly learn to look at that event in a different framing, so it's not as hurtful and emotionally painful to us. We reframe the meaning. This idea also relates to the power of positive thinking, or what's sometimes called growth mindset. These can all be good and helpful ideas. And there are other good ideas taught by NLP and transformational seminar people. For example, they do teach some valid and respected and legitimate principles of psychology and behavior. If there were zero good ideas at all in the mix, these people would find it a lot harder to find and retain customers. There needs to be some legitimate stuff in there. It's like Chase Hughes' book, The Ellipsis Manual. There are some good and decent ideas in the mix, which also happen to be the ideas that aren't his. But also in the mix, there's a lot of bullshit and nonsense. And the inclusion of real and meaningful stuff is what allows people who consume the work of Chase Hughes to say, hey, he's referencing some real studies and papers. He's not completely full of shit, like you say. But again, I'm not saying he is completely full of shit. It's just a very high percentage, a dangerous percentage. Let's just say if Chase Hughes were a hot dog, the FDA would not allow people to consume him. One of Chase's more expensive offerings is related to building confidence. The same dynamics would apply there. Just by being told some rather simple and good things, and just by the effort of trying to become more confident, I have no doubt Chase's students received value out of such things. And also, I think it's clear that Chase is someone who knows a lot about confidence. A Chase Hughes customer wrote me to thank me for my work exposing Chase and also told me about their positive experiences with his content. They wrote, "The Confidence Reboot program helped me a lot in a very short amount of time. Just after 4 weeks into it, I was even able to assert myself against my mother-in-law. I managed a regular daily routine and my mood improved." End quote. Again, my stance is not that people can't get anything out of the things offered by NLP trainers and people like Chase. Clearly they can and do. And then there's also a lot to say about the placebo effect. The placebo effect is real and powerful and can go a long way to explaining positive experiences in these kind of dynamics. Even for the stranger activities at transformational seminars, like getting everyone to stare into each other's eyes or other activities, those can be interesting and mind-shifting activities, genuinely. Some of the people who attend these kinds of trainings are people who are pretty buttoned up and straight and narrow type people. Especially for these types of people, some of the weirder activities can have a similar effect to taking hallucinogenics. These activities can break down normal routines and thought patterns. These can have beneficial and worldview expanding effects. But that also means that for some of the more psychologically vulnerable people, these events and experiences can mess with their minds. Some people will have panic attacks or other mental disturbances. So again, yes, I do understand why people have good experiences and why they want to keep giving these people money and time. I don't think all this stuff is bad. But a lot depends on the context. A lot depends on how deceptive the practitioner is and how exploitative and manipulative they are, and how many bad, unhelpful ideas are in the mix, and so on. And for many of the people who work in this realm, the focus seems to be largely on exploiting and manipulating people, on persuading people that the practitioners have special powers, on persuading people to keep coming back to spend thousands and thousands of dollars. Now, that isn't everyone in this space. For one thing, as I said, I think some people, including Steve Linder, who I worked for, really did believe that they were changing people's lives for the better. But I'm just saying I think it's clearly a common pattern. One of the ways these various NLP people gain traction and popularity is via other people in these spaces promoting them. There are incentives for people in these spaces to promote each other in a tit-for-tat way. When multiple people in these spaces are giving each other testimonials and praise, it helps create a veneer of respectability and authority and expertise. For example, here's an NLP book by Richard Nongard titled Excellence in NLP and Life Coaching: How to Structure Success and Create Influence at the Expert Level. The book's foreword is written by Chase Hughes. Here's a snippet from Chase's foreword. This book delivers powerful lessons in NLP and life coaching with applications to hypnotherapy practice that were hard-won and time-tested. Your ability to produce change in others will always come down to the factors that the academic community ignores, your skill level. You're holding this book because you understand that, and Dr. Nongard is about to deliver on massive scale. This is another theme of NLP trainers and people like Chase Hughes. The reason their work isn't respected by academics and researchers is because researchers aren't studying the right people. If academics knew to study the right, most skilled people, they'd be able to see how much this stuff really works. But again, that begs the question, if you were someone like Chase Hughes or another hypnotist or NLP trainer who believed they had massive insights on how to quickly influence and manipulate people and read people, wouldn't you want to research that? Wouldn't you feel compelled to involve researchers in the academic community? But I think it's rather clear why they don't, and why they instead merely downplay the fact that their grandiose claims aren't supported by research. Here's a snippet from that NLP book where the author, Richard Nongard, praises Chase Hughes. Many of you have read Chase Hughes' book titled The Ellipsis Manual. How do I know this? Because it is the best-selling book in hypnotherapy and the best-selling book on body language, and is one of the best-selling books in law enforcement. It is a fantastic book written by a military intelligence specialist, Chase Hughes, who shares his 20-plus years of experience in studying body language and interrogations, and leadership, in a range of diverse yet related topics. Chase shares some ideas that can help us to develop rapport back to the classic NLP idea. In Nongard's book, he praises Chase many times. There are several more references to Chase using similarly fawning language. And I believe Nongard genuinely believes Chase has done amazing work. And there's a valuable lesson there too. The people who hawk this kind of bullshit are themselves quite gullible. In many cases, they really are falling for this stuff as much as any of their customers are. Now, I don't think that's true for Chase himself. I think his deceptions are on the unusually high end of deception and manipulation. But I think a lot of people in this space, like Steve Linder and likely this Nongard person, are being fooled as much as they are fooling others. Peddlers of bullshit are often vociferous consumers of bullshit. Let's get more into why it seems so easy for so many people to believe this stuff. The answer to that question involves some aspects that relate to behavior analysis. For any set of data where there's a lot of noise and variance and things are hard to interpret, it will be easy for people to see what they want to see. The more high variance and obscure the data is, the more our biases and emotions will play a role in how we interpret things. For example, let's take the influence area. We all influence other people every day. We're constantly influencing others with our words, our tone, our gestures, our subtle body language, all sorts of things. That means it can be easy to make people think that they have been taught to have above average influence over others. It's just such a subjective and noisy arena. And because so much of influence comes down to confidence, believing you have more influence can make you have more influence. Just ask Chase Hughes. The confidence to lie so much and to do it so confidently has allowed him to influence many people. This isn't rocket science. Believing you're good at influencing people and having some confidence will help you influence them. And importantly, this can even help you fool yourself. You may consume Chase's products and try some of the ideas out in the real world and be like, hey, I'm influencing people. But are you influencing them more than you were before? Or are you just trying harder now at connecting and being social and trying to change other people's minds so it can seem like you're having more success? These are hard to define areas, and the ambiguity is part of what makes it easy to con people in these areas. And then there's the whole aspect of, what if I think I'm influencing people, but I'm only influencing the most gullible people, those who are easily influenced, while the smarter and more aware people see me as just acting over the top and strange. Just to say, things can be deceiving when it comes to rapport and influence building. Things can be more complex than they seem on the surface. And these points apply to analyzing behavior too. Behavior is extremely complex. Specific behaviors can have all sorts of explanations. Someone who seems anxious in an interrogation or interview setting may be anxious because they're guilty, or anxious because they're innocent and just stressed out of the situation, or anxious because they have a stomach ache, or some other reason. Behavior is complex and high variance, and when things are complex, it's easy to persuade others and even persuade ourselves that we have above average powers. It's easy to persuade ourselves that we are noticing important and meaningful things, and this becomes especially the case when we have information that biases our judgment. When we, for example, already know that there is good evidence that someone is guilty and lying, or whatever other information we might have. Another factor in the influence and behavior reading areas is that we seldom get immediate feedback about our reads and abilities. For example, when you seek to influence someone and you succeed, you'll seldom know what all the factors were. Maybe they were just being nice to you. Maybe they were just being nice to get out of talking to you. Maybe they did what you wanted because they were weak and easily influenced. Maybe they did what you wanted because it was just a good deal for them. It can be the same with reading behavior. When someone guesses what a behavior indicates, we aren't often going to know for sure what the truth was. We'll seldom get immediate and direct feedback on our guesses. These aspects of these softer skills of human psychology and behavior means it's easy for us to see what we want to see. I compare this to reading poker tells. If you watch a live stream of poker with the hole cards shown on a delay after the hand is over, you'll get immediate feedback on whether your guesses were right or wrong about people's behavior. This kind of immediate feedback doesn't exist for real-world interrogations and interviews. We may sometimes know later that someone wasn't telling the truth or that they were guilty, but that can still lead a lot of unknowns about the exact factors behind a specific behavior. And I want to be clear here, I'm not saying that there's no benefit or skill to reading behavior. I think there is. I'm someone who has written books about poker tells after all. And I also think I'm above average at spotting indicators of deception and obfuscation and interrogation scenarios. And furthermore, I'd say that some of those clues and patterns aren't even technically about deception detection, but just are reads based on levels of comfort and looseness, reads based on common patterns of interaction that guilty or innocent people have, which aren't even directly connected to spotting lies. If you're interested in deception detection, you should check out a previous episode of mine where I talked to Tim Levine about the difficulties in using behavior to spot lies. I also think there's a lot of interesting and valuable stuff in the statement analysis sphere. If you're interested in that, I recommend a previous episode where I talked to Mark McClish about that. So these things have value, but what I'm saying is that the behavioral areas are a lot more complex and high variance than a lot of people claim, and that similar to hypnosis and NLP, that complexity and ambiguity can make it easy for people to believe they've gained a lot of skill when they actually haven't. Just as beginner-level poker players often have an inflated sense of their ability to read tells. They remember the times that they were right, but downplay and forget the times that they were wrong. Another factor that helps explain why many will express satisfaction with such products and trainings is the placebo effect. Let's say that you were an MMA fighter who hired Chase to give you so-called performance hypnosis. Simply believing that Chase has amazing powers can make you believe he's done something amazing to you. You can feel changed by that. The placebo effect is another contributing reason why people like Chase can get good reviews from people he's worked with. In fact, that is part of what is taught in NLP and hypnosis trainings, that seeming to be an authority will help you influence people. Another factor in this is that if people don't get good results, they'll often assume it's their fault for not working hard enough or not doing something right. For example, in Chase's case, there's probably some people who see other people being happy with Chase's work and they think, the problem must just be me, so I shouldn't say anything. I don't want to look like a fool in being the only person who didn't get anything out of this. I've had a couple people write to me about reading Chase's Ellipsis manual who said things like, I always thought it was rather vague and impractical, but I figured I just needed to really practice the skills, but I just never did. These things are complex. There are multiple reasons why someone can get away with claiming for a long period of time that they have amazing abilities they don't have. The perception of authority can go a long way. The emperor can go a long time without anyone mentioning that he's naked. Deceptions in the NLP and hypnosis areas can have serious harms. It's not all just fun and games. There's obviously the financial harms, people losing thousands or tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. There's the psychological problems that you can find people write about if you Google transformational seminars and psychological problems, these kinds of things. One story that stood out from my 6 months in the NLP world was this one. Steve Linder was hired by a guy in the Portland, Oregon area to examine his hand tremor. He thought that Steve Linder's hypnosis might cure him of it. Linder asked the guy if his hand tremor happened when he slept, and the guy said no, just when he was awake. Linder claimed that this was proof that the hand tremor was psychological in nature, and so therefore it could be cured by Linder. I later talked to a doctor about this, and she said that this was bullshit, that Linder didn't know what he was talking about, that the guy could have a serious physical condition that needs medical assistance. I accompanied Linder when he went to this guy's house and did some hypnosis stuff to him. I never heard what came of that as I quit not long after that. I emailed that guy a few weeks after I quit to inquire about his health, but I never heard back. But just think about that for a moment. Linder was telling this guy his tremor was all in his head, that he didn't need real medical attention for his problem. Think about how badly that might go for a guy with a serious problem. Chase Hughes has now returned to hyping vitamin supplements of dubious quality. He's returned to his redshift roots. He's been promoting products from a chiropractor named John Lawrence, who Chase refers to as Dr. John. Here's a clip from the Instagram of Dr. John showing him treating Chase.
Tongue out, look down to your right, blow out slowly. Okay. Good. Beautiful. Yeah. That's a lot. What word would you give that emotional release?
Permission, I guess.
Dr. John runs a health and wellness supplement site at mitozen.com. Here's an image from Chase's YouTube showing him promoting an affiliate link for Mitozen. Here's a Wayback Machine look at Dr. John's Mitozen website from 2021. It reads, "We use only the finest ingredients and most advanced delivery systems." The word systems is spelled with an apostrophe S. The homepage features a rather silly-looking Dr. John in a white coat, a stethoscope slung around his neck, holding what I believe is meant to be a large, colorful mitochondria. Dr. John is all about the mitochondria from what I've seen. Underneath that it reads, 3 unique and powerful brands that are guaranteed to impress scientists, physicians, and even the educated layman. Glutagenic, Advanced Biome Corp, and Neurodial are all scientifically designed to be the most advanced healthcare technology in the industry, end quote. I searched for this glutagenic brand name and found a 2020 letter from the FTC telling Lawrence to stop saying his products could help treat COVID, due to that being against the law. The FTC letter reads, "Some examples of the claims on your website that establish the attendant use of your products and misleadingly represent them as safe and or effective for the treatment or prevention of COVID-19 include," and here it quotes from the glutagenic site, "Glutagenic's viral protection kit is being introduced due to the recent coronavirus outbreak. A great prevention strategy to utilize." Another example the FTC includes is this copy from his site. "Ways to prevent coronavirus. Use glutastat nasal spray 2 to 3 times a day, and at the end of the day, nebulize glutastat." And they include a few other examples from Lorenz's site. One Mitozen product Chase has been hyping lately is Methylene Blue. On the notes for a recent YouTube video of his, Chase writes, "9 months ago, my brain was falling apart. I was having up to 9 seizures a day and didn't even recognize my own family at times. Diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy, I was losing hope until I discovered something that changed everything. Methylene Blue. This blue dye from the 1800s, combined with melatonin and psychedelic therapy, helped me reverse my brain damage and regain my life. In this video, I'll share how these powerful molecules transform my brain health, stop my seizures, and might even help someone you know. You'll learn about the science behind mitochondria, how brain damage can be healed, and why traditional medicine may not always have the answers." Another product he's apparently been hyping from Mitozen is something called Sandman Sol, Sandman-SOL. Someone emailed me that these were, quote, "expensive melatonin suppositories at 200 times the daily dose," and that Chase was promoting these to his inner circle. And to be clear here, when I say inner circle, that refers to his fan base. It's not a slang term for his anus. Sorry, that was a suppository joke. I don't think it landed very well, and I apologize for that. Do these things work? I don't know. Does Chase believe these things work? I have no clue. I saw that Methylene Blue did seem to have some legitimacy for epilepsy treatments, although I didn't see anything about having a major benefit. I also found sites explaining that Methylene Blue can have serious side effects, including dizziness, rapid heartbeat, unusual bleeding and bruising, and vomiting, which likely explains why it's not a commonly prescribed substance. But regardless of the efficacy of this substance or the melatonin suppositories, the important part is to notice a pattern in these things. Chase used to deceptively market his own vitamin supplements, which he called Redshift with Neridium, claiming it had amazing and unique properties and that it was internationally known and used by Navy SEALs and other armed forces personnel, amongst other clearly untrue claims. Now he's hyping several substances with the help of a chiropractor wellness guy. Are the products good quality? Do they have beneficial properties? Are they overpriced? Are they dangerous? I don't know the answers to these things. I'm just examining a pattern. The person who contacted me who had spent more than $1,000 on Chase's products sent me the following, describing Chase's sales funnel and strategy. I've edited this a bit. Following standard cult dynamics, the first step is to isolate you in an app. This app was formerly called ABR and is now NCI, which stands for Neurocognitive Intelligence. Once he has you isolated, there are weekly Friday night lives. where Chase pitches his audience his products. The first product he pitches is the Confidence Reboot, which is aimed at persuading people they need his work improving their confidence. After that, it's 20 plus hours of deep hypnosis using binaural rhythms. During these events, people can act very strange. In one case, after being banned from the group, a person ended up in the emergency room due to panic attacks. The next upsell is the Ops Manual or the Ops 6 bundle, each of which move you into a more isolated community. Then later he pushes the 20K program. Within the app, Chase's volunteers use Chase's profile to sell you products. It's basically a profile mask that any of his salespeople can use. They use very hard sales tactics and emotional manipulation. That was the end of his message. Regarding the mention of panic attacks and emotional disturbance, one must remember that courses and products that claim to teach people how to be more successful and more influential often attract people who feel vulnerable and weak, people who are quite susceptible to influence. Some may also have undue and unhealthy respect for authority figures, making them even more vulnerable. This kind of thing can create a feedback cycle where people like Chase can start to really believe they are very powerful. They might start thinking something like, look at how much effect I have on these people. While the people in his circle can think, wow, look how much effect he has on me and other people. These are the kinds of dynamics present in all sorts of cult-like dynamics. Some of the techniques Chase and similar gurus use can really mess with these people's minds, not because they're powerful or special techniques, but simply because the people involved in these groups are so susceptible to influence. I wanted to include a couple interesting exchanges I had with some people in the NLP/hypnosis spheres. I thought these interactions I had with them regarding Chase Hughes were educational, just for showing how little they cared about these deceptions, which relates to how Chase Hughes and other people are able to get away with these deceptions. I reached out to an NLP and body language trainer named Tracy Brown, thinking she would be interested in my investigation into Chase. Here's a page on Tracy's site where she talks about how she got into NLP and then into body language. She says she's still available for one-on-one NLP training. Tracy's response to me was interesting, so I'll include it here. She writes, first, Chase is not the self-titled number one. He's ranked number one by globalgurus.org. Are you telling me that I'm a hoax for being number 3 on the list? What is your purpose for putting so much effort into tearing someone down? Tracy's first sentence is referring to the title of my episode, where I referred to Chase as the self-titled number 1 expert in behavior and influence. As Tracy points out, she and Chase are both featured on a site called globalgurus.org under the category of body language. Chase is number 1 and Tracy is number 3. Now, I'd never heard of the site globalgurus.org before, but because they list Chase Hughes as the number 1 expert, I think it's quite clear that their rankings don't mean anything. The interesting thing here is that Tracy views my information that I passed her about Chase as an attack on her, which I think is a strange deduction, as it's not related, or at least it shouldn't be related. But one can see why she would perceive it as an attack. She apparently is quite worried that her credentials might be in question if Chase's credentials are in question. My observation that Chase has lied about his credentials and experiences, I believe, threatens the fragile house of cards on which her and many others have built their claims to expertise and authority. That's stressful. Protecting her reputation seems to be the primary thing on her mind. Now, to be clear, I know next to nothing about Tracy Brown, but her reaction to my email, I think, says a lot about who she is and what she values. I think an ethical and responsible person, someone interested in the truth, would simply be curious and wonder things like, what did you find about Chase? Are these findings true? Should I tell other people in the community who are interested in behavior analysis about these findings? Another hypnosis person I contacted was named Jonathan Royal, as Jonathan had had Chase on his show 4 years before.
As usual, it's me, Alex William Smith by birth, but better known to many of you as Jonathan Royal, the British bad boy of hypnosis. And wow, have I got another amazing guest for you this week, whose brain we're going to try and pick and get some nuggets from.
Here's Jonathan's website, where you can see he offers various courses, including an elite hypnotherapy and NLP hypnosis bootcamp for £997, and a covert hypnosis and conversational hypnotism course for £597, something called the Millionaire Blueprint, the Lazy Person's Way to Get Rich for $397, Here's a $25 book by Royal titled Seance Secrets, Ghost Hunting Tricks and Paranormal Investigation Techniques. When I sent Royal information about Chase, he wrote me the following. I've edited this a little bit, pulling a few sentences that were separated together into one place. Anyhow, pretty much everything Chase claims is possible with hypnosis, influence, and persuasion is indeed possible. Ultimately, he has promoted himself well and has positioned himself well, so is skilled in marketing and such, which after all is persuasion. It does seem highly likely that he has at least distorted and or amplified his background experiences, tuition, etc., and yes, indeed, that should be called out. But it's also true to say where we are now today in 2024, he has sold tons of books and courses, got tons of great feedback, and has most certainly run sold-out live courses, as I know some people who've attended them here in London, England. To start with, I think Jonathan is wrong that everything Chase Hughes claims with hypnosis and influence is possible. I think almost all psychology and hypnosis experts, real experts, not just stage magicians, would agree with me there. Again, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And again, for people interested in stage hypnosis and how it works, I'd recommend checking out Martin Taylor, who I might talk to in future about this topic. You might also like a previous episode where I talk with the magician and psychologist, Tony Barnhart. One thing we talk about is Darren Brown, who uses magic tricks to make it seem like he's having impressive influence on people. Some people wrongly believe that Darren Brown is actually reading people's minds and influencing them in powerful ways, but it's just a magic show. Getting back to Royal's email response to me, the interesting thing about it to me is that he just doesn't seem that interested in Chase's many major lies. He clearly doesn't see that as important news, or at least claims to not see it as important news. He says that because Chase has gotten some good reviews and has some clients, that therefore that's evidence that he's doing something right and has some legitimate claims to authority in these areas. He also says that because Chase has done well in marketing, that's an indicator that he is good at persuasion and influence. But hopefully for the reasons I've discussed in this video, you'll see that none of that is evidence of anything. Anyone can get fans and get good reviews and get clients. Lots of scammers and fraudulent people have been quite popular. It's simply easy to impress people. Look at people like Belle Gibson, the successful health and wellness influencer, who it came out had faked cancer and other diseases. Or look at the succession of people highlighted by the account Ballerbusters, who falsely claim all sorts of success and wealth and expertise, and who have many fans and clients who attend their trainings and buy their products. Again, it's just easy to fool people. Royal's downplaying of Chase's lies echoes the points that quite a few Chase Hughes fans and defenders have made in my YouTube comments. They'll say similar things. Chase has fans and good reviews. Therefore, even if he used to be deceptive, it doesn't really matter. He clearly must have some skills and credibility. I would say that Royal's rather lackluster and unexcited response to learning about Chase's lies is similar to Tracy Brown's. There seems to be an incentive that both have to avoid examining what the Chase Hughes story might tell us about their line of work. There's a self-serving incentive to downplay the significance of the news, because to draw attention to the Chase Hughes story and paint it as significant might indirectly hurt their own reputations. And these dynamics, I think, apply for many of the influential people who have promoted Chase Hughes to their audience. For example, there's Robin Dreeke, who calls himself a global behavior expert and FBI master spy recruiter. His talk with Chase in 2020 has gotten more than 14,000 views on YouTube. 5 months ago in 2024, he shared another clip of Chase Hughes, which got a couple thousand views. Will he notify his audience about Chase's many lies, or will the same dynamics apply? Will he be afraid of how Chase's lies might reflect on him? After all, he claims to be an expert at behavior and crime. For him to call attention to Chase's lies would make people wonder why he'd so easily believe and promote someone with so many obvious red flags. I mean, Chase is a person I myself would never have had on my podcast. I would have looked into him for 5 minutes and concluded this guy is shady as hell. Then there's the Easy Prey podcast hosted by Chris Parker. He did a podcast talk with Chase Hughes in 2023 that's gotten 61,000 views. Ironically, that's a podcast about avoiding being exploited and harmed by others. Will Chris Parker be responsible enough to update his audience about this news to ensure they aren't exploited by Chase? Or are there too many incentives to ignore this and just carry on as usual? Then there's a show called Social Engineer LLC, which, like Easy Prey, is ostensibly a show about helping protect people from being exploited and harmed by criminals. Their video with Chase from 2019 has about 10,000 views on YouTube. Here's a guy named Leon Hendricks, who has a show called Driven, D-R-V-N. His video from just a few days ago promoted Chase as, quote, the U.S. government's brainwashing and interrogation expert training the intelligence agencies, a neuroscientist, and the world's #1 human behavior expert. Right now, that video has more than 230,000 views and is going up as I speak. His video featuring Chase from July of this year has more than 1.7 million views. Leon Hendricks is a major promoter of Chase use. Leon is also promoting Mitozen's Methylene Blue product. He writes on his YouTube video description, use code Leon for 5% off. That's just a few of the many people who've interviewed Chase Hughes and promoted him as an expert to their audience. How much does gullibility play a role? How much does a desperation for content and clicks play a role? How much does greed play a role? I'm sure the role these factors play vary for different people. And for what it's worth, I reached out to all these podcasters who have promoted Chase Hughes, the ones I've mentioned and a few more. Almost nobody got back to me. A couple of the people I mentioned I had exchanges with, and they didn't seem interested in updating their audiences. For a couple of them, I left comments on some of their YouTube videos that were later erased. In short, no one I've reached out to has expressed any interest in notifying their audiences about this, although maybe some are planning to. Then there's the behavior panel members themselves. They are supposedly behavior experts. They're people who claim they can help you spot and avoid bullshit and detect deception, but they've worked closely with Chase Hughes for years. With every episode they now put out, with every minute that passes where they give Chase Hughes a large platform, they are helping him find a large audience. What does all this tell you about the quality of their work? What does it tell you about their dedication to accurate and responsible information? How long have they known about this stuff? And then there's Dr. Phil, a guy who has an audience of millions and who presumably has the financial resources to easily vet people and exercise some due diligence. He has promoted Chase to his audience. He has called Chase the, quote, best on the globe. How many of the people who have paid Chase thousands of dollars, or who may do that in the future, will have Dr. Phil to thank for that? I emailed Dr. Phil's media company, Merritt Street Media, about this and haven't heard anything back. Disappointing and sad stuff, to say the least, but that's apparently the world we live in. A world where clicks and views and getting attention seem to matter the most to many people, where accuracy and vetting and looking out for your audience seems to take a backseat often. At the end of the day, it's up to you what you'll do with this information. People are free to purchase and consume whatever materials and products they want, no matter how much bullshit I and others think they might contain. My goal with all of this is to shed some light on some major deceptions in these spaces, to help people ask a few more questions before spending a lot of money, or even before giving someone respect and time and attention. Because life is short, I think it's a good thing to try to avoid filling your mind with nonsense. There are just so many smart and respectable and ethical people in the world, doing great and interesting work, and so it is disappointing to me that it seems that so often people pay the most attention to those who overstate and deceive. A lot of my work over the years is about getting people to be more skeptical and less gullible, whether that's online or elsewhere. We're just surrounded by so much bullshit these days. The internet has really amplified the bullshit. And while I'm on the subject, I'd like to promote the work of Brian Dunning, who runs the Skeptoid podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I think you'd like his work, skeptoid.com. He's also got a Substack that I recommend at briandunning.substack.com. Brian's just done some impressive work examining exaggerations and inaccuracies and misunderstandings for all sorts of topics. I think we make the world a better place by calling out bullshit and deception and helping people realize when they're being fooled and misled. I think we rise by helping people think critically and make better decisions. Thank you for watching. Music by Small Skies.